capo.
Hi guys, I hope you're all well. Welcome to Fitness Aces, a live stream program brought to you by myself, Dio and Josh, aimed at improving the fitness levels and physical attributes of tennis players of all ages and all levels. My name's Mike Kelly. I'm the lead strength and conditioning coach at Soto Tennis Academy in Sotogrande, Spain.
Hi guys, my name is Dio Miranda. I'm a high performance exercise kinesiologist and a strength specialist, training both the mind and the body at the Austin Tennis Academy.
Hey guys, Josh Rifkin. I'm a master tennis performance specialist as well as a tennis coach at the Austin Tennis Academy with Dio. And as Mike said, here's our weekly program. We're going to be showing different exercises, regressions, and progressions to help everyone at any age or level improve their tennis fitness or performance in three major areas: strength, power, and injury prevention and activation. So we'll start this week off with an injury prevention and activation with a drill. So this is me. I'm going to be showing a thoracic spine, or it's a mid-back mobilization. I have a pillow underneath my head. I would suggest using a foam roller or a pillow underneath your head, or even that bottom leg. You can see that it's on the ground. So then what you're going to do is grab the ankle and just open up your chest as much as you can. And you're going to find an end position in which you take a big breath in. And if you watch my right shoulder or my neck and everything, I'm going to take big breaths in and expand. And then when I exhale, I'm actually improving my range of motion here into mid-back rotation. So this is primarily a rotational exercise, but what this can do is holding that bottom leg. It's also getting a big stretch on the quad, front thigh, hip flexor, into core and obliques, up into my right shoulder even. So it's a very, very, very large movement that is gentle in nature. It looks pretty aggressive, but it's gentle in nature because I'm just holding a position and I'm using my breath to let myself go further. So once again, if you're doing this at home, it's just a pillow underneath the head as well as that top thigh that I have bent over. Pull that leg back like you're doing a quad stretch. There's my end range. Take a big breath in, hold, exhale, and now my range improves. What you have to watch for here is that the knee, the hips aren't moving, hence me putting that knee on the ground as well. So it's going to improve thoracic rotation, which is massively important. Tennis athletes being rotational in every shot, ground stroke, serves, volleys, and being able to extend and rotate the spine. So, yeah, this is called the pretzel. Looks like the pretzel position. So, I'm not sure if guys have any thoughts on this. There's a lot we can talk about with thoracic spine rotation.
Yeah.
More to share or add as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring the breathing, the breath and the respiration into this. It's actually a way where you can see how important respiration is for the body. You know, sometimes we don't think about stuff like that. And I like when you bring things into the moment that you can see that creates change into the movement that you're trying to show here. And that's awesome because it's huge, right? If you hold your air in, you won't be able to do what you just did. So the little things once again, you know, and also like maybe in a little bit you can go into not everyone can get into a pretzel, you know, like what can they do a little bit like to get to it, you know, like contract, relax, maybe, you know, stuff like that. So
yeah,
a little
for
bit.
sure.
Yeah, I think as you both mentioned and Theo mentioned there about the breathing. Breathing is huge on an exercise like that as well. When you're trying to get a little bit more range, instead of holding breath, instead of instead of tensing and being really, really tight and uptight, the ability to, usually through the nose, nasal breathing, just breathing in nice and gently, breathing out nice and gently, like big breaths, but very, very, very calm breaths, will allow you, as you saw Josh in that video, to just go a little bit further. You would then breathe again, go a little bit further, breathe again, go a little bit further. I think that's massive in an exercise like this, is using that breath, using that inhale, exhale to trick the body and tell the body that it's okay to go to these positions, and it's okay to relax into these positions and get a little bit more range through, well, I know through the T-spine there, but also into that hip flexor and quad and things as well. That's an awesome movement. So much for one movement. Yeah. Sorry guys. Yeah. Go for the regression.
Was trying the big bang, like the big bang for the buck, because, you know, let's say there's not much time. This is something that I would do or have my athletes do prior to going to play, or even prior to a tennis specific workout where there's a lot of rotation, or loading in the legs with rotation and having just a little bit more freedom of movement there. This can also be done for recovery as well, because as you both mentioned, guys, the breath can help with calming. It's calming, it's more intentful, so it can help open and relax the body as well. But primarily this is going to be before I have someone play, and it's using that breath to go further and also send the signal to the brain, like, I'm okay going here. The body's going to protect and not allow breathing where you're tight, right? If you're holding a painful stretch, I'm guilty of this. It's like, like you're holding that position, not breathing. The breath is going to help that relaxation signal. So yeah, if you're someone that has trouble like rotating in general, or rotating and getting into loads and turning your torso for your tennis game, this Bretzel movement, what it's doing is it's getting a big stretch on this chain of tissue up to that opposite shoulder and then rotating from the mid back. But this position's tough. It would be something I would suggest everyone try to work their way into. If you have a towel or a belt or a band, you can even start to grab. You can wrap it around the leg and be able to pull the thigh that way as you go into the Bretzel movement. But even then, you may not want to start there. You can just go sideline, and my knees are just up at 90 degrees. And I'm going to take my top arm, and I'm going to just focus on my torso now. So I'm kind of taking that big bang hip move out of it, but you can work up to that. I'm grabbing the ribs, and I'm just going to open up. When I hit my end range, about right there, that's where I'm going to take my breath in. Exhale. I can get a little bit more of that left shoulder going to the floor. The breath is taking me a little further. You want to prevent the legs and knees from moving in hips, because that's going to actually move your lower back, which typically we want to have stable and have stability in the core, low back, and have a lot of movement in the trunk and into the upper body. So that's one I like to do. There's a ton of different variations for thoracic spine or T-spine mobility, but it's something that when I work with an athlete for the first time, I'm almost always finding a restriction in some sort of thoracic spine rotation. Maybe they're just not in sync with each other, like one side's better than the other, being a one-sided sport, or it's just kind of restricted where the movement's limited, and then maybe this athlete's even complaining of something like in the low back or hips or even shoulder pain, and this limited mobility in the mid-back can contribute to both of those issues there.
Yeah, right. You can, from one thing you want to do, we usually find other things, like, you just mentioned a shoulder, the things that I feel somewhere else when I'm not even trying to accomplish that. And we just take that information and use it in the future, right? When I put myself into this position, I feel my shoulder kind of, feeling something weird. And then when they're going to the court, and then they don't know, and they're like actually asking themselves to do the same movement while rotating, they feel the shoulder again. So you can put it together and pay attention to it. Maybe stretch a little more, maybe strengthen a little more. Maybe it's a yellow flag, something's coming, and you can catch it before a red flag is there. So Again, awareness, right? Doing things that to get in contact with yourself, and that's exactly what you want as an athlete. And if your coach knows that, then it's even better. So you got two going at it. So
yeah, I also think the big thing Josh mentioned was that differentiation between sides. Like it's a massive thing in our sport. You know, you might feel fine on one side, you might have a big restriction on another side, and that's knowing as a coach, that's knowing your athletes as an athlete, that's knowing yourself, and it's knowing that, right, I have to spend a little bit more time on this side. Maybe like Josh said, at the end of the day, right, like my focus is to try and increase that range on the left or right hand side to try and get it up towards the other side. It's a huge area, and it's one that's commonly encountered within tennis. So I think, yeah, like having a go at this drill, whichever level you have a go at it at, and comparing the sides, doing a video, doing a photo, comparing the sides, how much movement you have there, but not just the movement, the path to get there as well is an important thing. I think being able to get into position is one thing. Being able to get there smoothly and with control is another thing as well. So yeah, checking that out for yourselves and having a little look at that's a big key area, because it's such an important aspect of our sport.
Yeah.
awesome.
I'll share, I guess, like you mentioned, like doing this yourself or having a picture. Let me just share one thing, how you can kind of tell at home if which side might be a little bit tighter or not. And then we can move on from this. So you can use this as kind of a self assessment at home, but you can also do this as one of the actual mobility drills. Like I said, that Retzel, you may not be able to get there depending on knee, hip, a lot of different things. But if you go here and you're on this 4-point or this forearms down, and my hips are going to be locked back. So my hips are sunken back, which means my hips can't move, so my low back is not going to be able to rotate. We don't want that here. So our hips are back, forearms in front, and I'm going to take my right hand behind my neck, and I'm keeping my nose in line with my fist here. And I keep that, and I just rotate up. And I need work here, okay? So no making fun here. But I can kind of see where that shoulder rotation, my mid-back rotation is getting. Maybe you take a picture there, and then I can switch sides. And if you see, I feel way more rotation on that side. Is that different on your guy's end?
Big difference, yeah.
So that's more restricted. So I might have to spend a little more time doing this movement using my breath, and you can kind of see at home how those sides change up. So that's a different variation of that drill. There's a ton of them out there. Open books, those positions of where you're locking your lower back and going. Just encourage everyone to play with it without forcing, and also using your breath is massively important. So being able to load this position afterwards, we talked in the first episode on that ankle mobility, guys, with the loading with the squat afterwards, that after you get this new range of motion, it's important that you explore this range of motion before just going on and dropping bombs on the court, hitting serves or ripping forehand. So being able to do some slow controlled rotational movements or chops or whatever is in that training program for the day can help reinforce the brain and body connection, and then go out and see how your rotation improves on the court. For sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Josh.
Yeah.
Awesome, Josh. One final thing for me would be sometimes when you see people doing what they think is this type of drill, when Josh was trying to rotate and he was hugging onto his ribs, that's going to give that thoracic rotation. What sometimes we see is we want to get to that position. People, if they do it with a straight arm, then think they're getting that position, but all they're getting is that range through their shoulder, and they're forcing the shoulder, and they're not actually getting as much thoracic rotation as we want. So I think the ability to grab the rib and feel like you're rotating the shoulders at the same time is a big key area for that one as well. It's quite easy to just cheat that mobility with a little bit of extra work from the shoulder. So it's a great point and a great coaching cue to hold that rib and to move through that T spine as opposed to using the shoulder too much. Awesome, Josh.
That's such a good point. And the young kids are guilty of this a lot with the mobile shoulders. And when people go to serve and they need rotation and they can't rotate in their trunk, now where do you think they're going to make up that extra range of motion from? I can't rotate here, so I'm going to crank my shoulder back, as Mike was saying in that drill. You can literally have players be doing this on their serve. I can't rotate here. I'm going to crank back from here, and now because I get more speed and have a better serve, but that's going to take a toll on that shoulder. Mike, that's an awesome, that's a great thing to bring up too. So that can correlate to the ground strokes and serves as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything to close on, or can we want to move to strength with Dio?
I'm good. I'm good to see Dio.
It's good. There's so much more, but we got to move on.
Yeah, there's more. All right, Dio.
Hi, that's me. We are going to be showing today the deadlift. There's so many variations to that we can perform the deadlift. I will be going through some basics, and the guy is going to be helping me to break it down a little bit. So that's my favorite. That's actually the sumo squat. And what makes a sumo, I'll tell you in a little bit. Then that's like what we call the normal deadlift, where you're scraping your shin there. And then that's a squat, where people get confused about, squatting and deadlifting. For tennis players, it's huge if you dominate the deadlift, because that's really where you spend most of your time, even, when you get ready to hit the ball. So, and it's really cool because it teaches you the disassociation that, you can separate the movement from the body and use just your hips for the movements. And again, love the deadlift. If you add weight in the front, you can work your back, your neck as you go from the posterior side, your glutes, your hamstrings, and all the way to the bottom. So deadlift is huge for the game and for a lot of functional activities in life. What I want to say, it's really important to find out really what works for you. The reason why I like to do the sumo squats, which is the first one I show you in this movement, is because it allows me to open the hips a little more. And I can show you in a little bit what I mean live. It allows me to open the hips a little more. So I'll go here, right? Like I show you on the video, I did this one first. It's my favorite, the sumo, just like a sumo wrestler, right? And what I say that allows me to open the hips is like they're not closed, they're a little open, and my knees are facing outward. And that way, the movements go, if it's a deadlift, you begin the movement with your hips. So you move those hips back instead of going into squat, which it allows you to begin the movement using your knees. So the deadlift is going to the back. It's going to the back. So that you have someone pulling you through your butt right here. And then I also teach my students, especially when we swing the bell a couple of times as a warm-up, I always tell them, imagine we have some arrows in here, in your pocket, and you're loading them, and then as you go up, you're going to create force, and they're going to shoot forward. I just want to give them the picture of what has to work in order to make the deadlift work, right? And then go from there. It works all my extensor mechanism, like I said before, from my neck to my back, glutes, hamstrings. And I just also use different grips for the bar. To go here, I can go here, I can go here, I can twist it. And I'm not picky with that. I just let my athletes grab it where they feel the strongest and then go from there, okay? But it's really important that we work on this hinging pattern, the bending pattern, and teach our athletes to, get familiar with this movement. Because after all, when you take it to court, you're here all the time. And this is really important. Again, the reason why we train is because we want to take ourselves to court to perform and think and make plays, but you don't let your body being distracted by not being in shape or by not being exposed to the things you usually do on court before you do them, you know? So again, it's like the more repetitions you give to the brain, and you can see movement, the better you are on court. So you're not worried about those things. So sumo is my favorite. Then the normal one that many people use, they grab the bar. Today's, if you're in your house, you can grab like dumbbells if you have them, or anything that has weight. And again, so on this one, I'm closing my feet a little bit. Again, I'm activating my hips going back. And then I let that bar, think if you don't have a bar, to scrape my shins a little bit. And then from there, move through the hips going forward. Again, you can do alternated grip, reverse, or whatever makes you feel the strongest. Head straight like this. A lot of people like to do this. I'm fine if you're an experienced lifter, but I like to keep my spine straight and then go from there. Okay? And I love it because on the deadlift is one of those exercises where my athletes, you can put a little bit of weight on it. They feel really strong. It's good for the brain, right? They feel strong. That brings other sensation and messages, and they can perform other stuff. And to close this and let the guys have some opinions on it, make sure the movement come from the hips again. This is a squat. That's a squat, which I'll show you a little bit. And this is a deadlift. You see, I'm not bending my knees that much. And then you do what you got to do for that specific bending pattern. Guys?
Awesome, Dio. Yeah, I think deadlift's a huge one. So whether that's general population, whether that's athletic population, tennis, whatever, it's a huge exercise, and one that often comes with deadlifts hurt my back. And there's a reason that deadlifts hurt your back, and that's because you're probably not doing deadlifts correctly. I think deadlifts done well, an amazing exercise, and I think if we take it right back to what the movement is, and if we were training younger kids and just teaching them what Dio was talking about was like the hip hinge pattern. So with a squat, that's our squat pattern where we get lots of bend at the knee and we get lots of flexion and bend at the hip. In our hinge pattern, we try and fix the knee a little bit, and then we try and flex, we try and bend the hip. And that's a movement, that's a dissociation or an association that a lot of people struggle with. As soon as you start to, I'm just going to take it back a little bit.
Yeah.
As soon as you start to teach this movement, a very common thing that we see is as you start to move the hips, the knees just want to bend and bend and bend, and it ends up being that squat pattern that Dio was talking about. What we want to be able to do is fix the knee and then be able to use the hip while fixing that knee position. So the angle at the knee hasn't changed a great deal, whereas the angle at the hip has changed a lot. And I think just as a starter, I think the ability to be able to differentiate between a squat and a hinge, a deadlift, is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me go again into why I like the sumo better. And this is more for coaches, because as coaches we like to push stuff sometimes, but we have to be aware that hey, there's some we call anatomical barriers, right? Like not everybody can do this, so not everybody got that hip mobility or place to accommodate those bones to move freely. So pay attention to if your athlete is like doing the deadlift and they feel a little weird on some areas, try not to force or bring some mobilization exercises that you can create your own, taking your people through the movement and kind of test where they are. But I'd rather you do that before you get into coaching super mode and begins to push things through the hip, which can bring other issues later. such as jaw issues and stuff like that. But I don't want to get that deep into it. But it can happen. The jaw and the hips and the relationship and all these cool things that sometimes we don't know where they come from, and it's us pushing things into. So just want to wake up some thoughts. Josh, I see you want to say some things.
No, that's good. It's a good. I mean, it's a really good point. Mike breaking down like associating just that movement from the hips only, disassociating from the knee bend. Dio talking about the different positions of the hip and what stance might be better. Getting across that deadlift is a massive full body movement, and there are multiple variations of deadlifts to help you improve your strength and power and protect your body as you play tennis, regardless of where you're starting with this pattern. It's how are you getting this hip hinge pattern progressively adding resistance or load, making it more challenging, and then hopefully eventually getting upright as Mike and Dio were both standing up tall and doing different variations that way. I mean, tennis is three-dimensional. You can do loads on one side of the body. You can do single leg deadlifts. Like that's where you should be looking to progress to if you're going to be competing at a very collegiate or elite level is single leg RDL, single leg deadlifts. But starting from a super strong base and foundation that we've done on the push-ups, we've done on the split squats, on all of the past episodes. It's that super strong foundation to open up potential for the biggest bang for your buck as you progress your body and your game. And something with the deadlifts that I want to talk about is a lot of tennis athletes are foreign to this. And I'm foreign with no head here, apparently. Are foreign to this in the sense that a lot of times they're on your toes, quad dominant, bouncing, hinging forward, that there's not really an understanding of how to use the glutes and hips to explode up. But the deadlift is something that's going to help maintain stability on the big muscles in the back and also help drive power from the court and ground. So loading, even though a lot of positions might be lunging and squat patterns, being able to connect your body to being in this athletic position, loading the hips and the glutes, massively important. And then if you load it, you're working the postural core stability system at the same time. So really, really, really big movements here. Help the tennis athlete. One of my favorite movements for lower body strength and power is going to be a deadlift variation. We use the hex bar or like the trap bar deadlift. Mike, I don't know if you on that position, but the load's pretty much right beneath you. You're getting that nice hip hinge position, and you're just pushing through the ground to stand up.
Yeah.
And I wanna share like, okay, maybe you've done deadlifts and the back hurts, or you're not sure if you can do it. There's positions where you don't have to deadlift from the floor. Okay, you don't have to lift the weight from the floor. You have bad back experiences, or you're getting back into this pattern. Maybe it's right here and it's lifted. I'm in a big sumo stance, and I can hip hinge and grab weight here, no problem. Let's say if I'm here and I'm going to the floor, I might go to the floor, and now my spine starts to round. Now I'm lifting from this position. I'm very vulnerable. The ligaments of my lower back, posture's not working, and I'm going to lift a heavy weight. Why not raise the floor, get in this super strong posture, and then stand and lift as you can stay strong and stable? And hopefully as you progress with your range of motion and your mobility stuff, you can get lower and lower to the floor. But why? Why do you need to force that, as Dio was saying earlier, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up because it's so important, right? Like the things we see and you got to do it this way. And they're like, again, like descending the movement. Mike brought it up, breaking down the hips. You can also, for some people, especially kids, you can go on your knees, and then you pretty much literally cut the legs, and from there you begin to work your hips. You isolate that movement more because it's hard to squat from here, right? Because you just cut your knees. So this is another one you can do, and you can add weight to it. You can add weight to it. And what Josh was talking about, like bringing different things to challenge the patterns, how we move, like frontal plane and sagittal and transverse. So in this case, it will be frontal. You can do things like this and load it up and then go from there. Again, bringing different messages, shooting different messages to the body, doing different things and adapting from there. And eventually what you want is to stand up because you play tennis standing up. and then adding the load and keep improving from there. So pretty awesome movement. Again, descending,
It is.
ascending.
It is. It's fantastic, and I think as tennis players, it's movement that we should be good at. I think what you guys have already touched on as well massively is we don't need to be good at one form of deadlift. We're not powerlifters. You know, we're not doing that movement to compete at that movement. So the sumo stance or the partial deadlift, like Josh was talking about, where you just go from a platform, you just work at your level as well. I think that's the key thing. Is we just saw Hafthor Bjornsson. He broke the world deadlift record at the weekend, 501 kilos. As a tennis player, we will never get even anywhere near that, even half of that. We don't need to. It's working what you need to work to improve your ability to perform your sport. So if there's a variation that you prefer, like, again, I'll go back to what Josh said. If you do it off a 30 centimeter box, but then your hip range and your ankle range maybe increase a little bit, then you might drop down to a lower box, then they increase again and you drop down. There's always a way to train this movement and progress this movement as well. Just because a deadlift is a deadlift doesn't mean it has to look like a conventional deadlift all the time. There's so many variations, and it's such an important movement, that hip hinge, that there's hundreds and thousands of variations that we can go down. But that's awesome. Love it.
Yeah. And with this, I close. Because I feel like people might have some questions about it. The deadlift, it becomes dead weight when it touches the floor. There are ways to do that. Touches the floor and go from there. You also can work on different contractions not touching the floor. That will change your deadlift, just that little movement. So again, so many things. We just want to wake up some thoughts in you and make sure you use some things with sense. So great information. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to Mike and Power, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Right, guys, so the power section, what I want to do is build on from what I did in week number 1. So in week number 1, I did force absorption. I'm just going to show you a quick demonstration of what we did. Once you feel like you've got that, I'll move back and do a quick demonstration, but that was the video that I'm going to show you for this week. I'm going to move back, show you a quick demonstration of what we did in week 1, and then I'm going to link the two together and show you why we start off with 1 and then why we move on to what we're going to do this week. So, week number 1, we did the tall to short, or the cowboy. Sorry, I haven't got a head. We go as tall as we can, and then we drop down into a nice, strong position, but we pull ourselves down into that position. So we go really, really tall, and then we drop and pull ourselves in that position. We've now got a strong, stable position that we can build from. So the other variations that we did of that were things like the single leg variation and things like that. What I want to do is so say if you did that in week number 1 and you've been doing it for the last 3 weeks, then this is where I would take you next if you were doing it well and your knees, your ankles look good. If we play the video, then I'll just talk over. So it would be what we call a concentric only. So I'm starting from a seated position. I'm going to show you 2 different variations. So one, I'm trying to jump high. The other, I'm trying to jump forwards. Not as far as I can, but just in a controlled way that I can stick the landing every time. So again, at the moment, what I want to get through is the quality of the movement at the moment, as opposed to, I think we're almost too quick as an industry to go straight into what's your vertical, we need to get it better, we need to get it better, we need to get it better. But a massive part of tennis is how we control these forces on court in terms of performance enhancement, but also injury prevention. So what we've done is we've gone from week number one where we've controlled forces and lowered ourselves into an eccentric absorption position. Now we're taking out any stretch reflex. All that means, it probably sounds complicated to some, but all it means is the muscles that we're working, what we do is if we want to jump as high as we can, we put them under a big stretch and then we let them go and we put them under lots of extension and contraction, so then we can jump as high as we can. With this, it takes out that first part, so we can focus purely on just that coordination. Coordination's a big one with jumping, to be able to coordinate those movements, to be able to then spring forwards or upwards. Again, in terms of this movement, as we progress through, we could jump to the side, we could jump forwards and upwards like I showed you in the video, we could go off a single leg, but it's all with the intention of nailing down those techniques before we think about how far. I want you to think about how well before you think about either how much or how far. So going through these movements with quality is a huge thing to do before we then go on to anything else. And as I say, sitting down into that seat takes away that stretch reflex. So we're just focusing on pushing into the floor and then trying to coordinate our limbs, our body, to try and get high or try and get as far as we can in these two drills. I don't know if you have anything to add, boys, before we move on.
Go, Josh.
Yeah, keep going. No, I love like the seated variation or a box variation if you have access to a gym, and you can change the different levels in which you're loading. Just that, what Mike said, that concentric or just kind of force production pattern. And what's cool about this is because that stretch reflex is gone, or you're not going down into that load. If you watch his video, the posture, the control is massively controlled. The control's controlled. Yeah. A lot of times what people will do is when they go down into these huge jumps, or younger kids or players who haven't worked on that first week stuff that Mike showed, that impact control, they'll go into the jump and then torso falls forward, the knees cave in. It's that position between the load and explode when a lot of those things break down, because the force is going from being stretched like a rubber band or slingshot to being shot out. This chair variation takes away that piece. So if someone's trying to do these jumps and they just want to get really high in the jumps or go big, and they take a huge absorption, when I go to reverse my force from that stretch reflex, my knees might cave in, my torso might fall forward, and now I'm jumping that way. It doesn't always happen, but that's the phase of this pattern that you might see it the most. That's where the most stress is going to be on the low back, on the knees, and if you have weight, forget about it. That's even more stressful on those joints.
Yeah.
So this boxer chair variation is really cool to do. Even with people who are extremely advanced in this type of movement, I like to use the box pattern to actually, I don't know if I can show it well or not, but to actually, you're not starting from the stretch, so it's forcing all the glutes, the legs to fire from nothing. So it's forcing a little bit more activation, kind of like that dead stop push-up I showed last week with my chest. It's doing the same kind of thing with that lower body. So we're working on control, power production, but also activation of all those muscles to fire very, very fast. There's no time to stand up slow in the chair. That's not what tennis is about. It's about that power. So being able to start from that stop position, even sometimes rocking back with the feet off the ground and pushing through, you're not stretching the muscle, but you're getting a disconnect, and then all those muscles have to fire really fast. So really cool variation for sure. And I would do that with any.
That's awesome. I like my comments when he's saying straight up to, like, make sure that you get this to the T, like the form needs to be correct in order to keep going. And then when you're bringing up Josh with the, knees caving in and, all these things that we have to be careful. Actually, especially with it's always a hot topic, like training females, right? Like equal but not the same, and the Q angle, their hips are a little wider, and how the knees gonna go in. And there's many corrective ways to help them with this, but just a reminder, remember, you have to be strong to be powerful. So Mike is breaking it down here really cool. Like he's really, which is super cool because he's really descending a power movement, you know, break down again messages to your brain, like, a specific position in the dead area and then go from there and explode. Huge. But then the landing, coaches, athletes, make sure your knees stay straight. If your knees keep caving in, and you see your hips are collapsing and your back is just going down, then you need to qualify yourself to do things like this. So you got to go back and work on maybe you don't jump that high. Maybe you jump a little bit and see what happens. Go from there, again, guys, there's so many things, right? But the way that Mike brought it up and put on the chair, that and creating force from nothing is huge. So that's awesome.
I think what you both have touched on is even just something as simple as a vertical jump is so chaotic, and all we're trying to do is take a little bit of the chaos away. I think with jumps in particular, we almost have been taught to look at the final landing. So what I might do is, if I just do a regular jump, what I might do is I might jump and land here. It looks okay, so the coach says it's fine and you're good to go. But exactly like Josh said, what can happen, what a lot of people can miss as well when we're doing multiple repetitions as well, is it's not that final jump and stick, it's that load. As we load, a lot of people will go into that position and then drive up and then land in this nice position, because that's almost how they've always been coached. And it's a really subtle thing to notice on that loading that a lot of people miss, because they're looking for that final landing position. They're looking for that, right, how did they finish? Knees are in line, everything's good. You watch a video back and the knees have touched as they've tried to load that jump. So I think regressing before you progress is massive, and breaking them down. So from episode 1, where we learned how to control a landing, to episode 4, where we now use that position that we almost finished in, you don't have to start off from a chair. You could do a tall to short land, hold that for a few seconds, and then do that power production, that concentric only, because you've taken away that stretch reflex. There's lots of ways you can then layer it up and increase the level and difficulty of the exercise without going straight into a really chaotic environment.
Yeah. I feel, I don't know why I'm feeling this, but like if you watch what we're doing really closely, you actually can create a mini program for your athlete. So, and I give you more information. Remember, when you do power, there's like, I did 6 to 8 repetitions all out. And then I do like 5 to 6 sets. And remember, you need to rest in between so your athlete's ready to do it again. And again, quoting Mike, don't rush. If you have to descend it even more, there's not a problem with that. What you're doing is just like regressing, get better, and then eventually, boom, you can like do exactly what you're looking for or what you see on the internet and stuff like that. So it's awesome.
I think that's a really good point to make. I'm good. Sorry, Josh. I'm going to steal in for 2 seconds. I'm going to mention it again because it was a moment of history. Thor deadlifted 501 kilos. We all saw that on the internet. That doesn't mean we all the next day go to the gym and try it. We go to where we are with that movement and we lift what we need to lift. We'll see people do some very fancy, sexy things, I'm going to use that word again, on the internet in terms of power and plyometrics, but work where you're at, improve what you need to improve, and you will get to those more exciting, more fancy looking exercises when you're ready to. think that's a big point to make on these things. Sorry, Josh, go for it.
So that made me think of one more thing is that the tennis athlete is about power, it's about control, and it's about repeatability. So if you're trying to get this maximum huge deadlift pattern with poor form, I mean, you might get one rep, risk injuring yourself, but that's not repeatable and controlled. And it's not powerful over and over again for a period of match or multiple matches over a day, a week, however, whatever level of competition. So controllability, repeatability with power for that duration, massively important for tennis athlete. And I have to do it, guys. I have to show one thing for if people have been following or they have done the prerequisites of the impact control mic or they've been doing deadlifts and power movements and squats. So just how you can piece these together for maybe a collegiate level or coaches if you have certain players of different levels watching. What I might do with an athlete is take them through a controlled deadlift pattern, and then I would go into Mike's controlled power production drill. So it does two things. You're getting power after you've trained the muscle, so you're forcing them a little past maybe fatigue, and then you're bringing this chair into effect or this box in a controlled environment, so you're able to more safely train power when the body and nervous system might be fatigued. So I might take someone through, let's say, sumo stance deadlift for whatever 8 to 10 reps, and then I would go right away to Mike's drill, and then he does a horizontal power production movement. So you're getting that hip hinge pattern with strength, getting those muscles to activate, and then from a dead stop position, forcing contraction. I had to bring that up. That would be an advanced or higher level if you guys have already controlled the body, the impact control, training deadlifts, training power movements. That's not what I would start with at all.
Thank you for the message at the end. You're going to have some passionate people that are going to go and try that. So make sure, again, to qualify yourself. Go for it.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome, guys. Nothing else
great.
to add? Good.
I think yeah. So sometimes.
True. So,
or it means
guys,
that there's so many.
Thanks for tuning in, though. Remember, with this weekly Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Standard European Time, and you can watch on-demand Fitness Aces on Soto Tennis Academy and Austin Tennis Academy Facebook page, as well as YouTube Fitness 2020, YouTube 2020 live. It's going to be weekly Tuesdays. Thanks for
awesome, guys.
Cool. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Good job. Guys.